Most of us know that a funeral is a time for respect and quiet. But for some people, it is just an opportunity to act like a complete lunatic. We are looking at 101 specific times when common decency left the building. From fighting over the inheritance in the church parking lot to hitting on the widow, we are about to see the absolute worst of humanity. 1. Zero shame. We have reached the peak of narcissism when you are snapping selfies next to an open casket, tagging it #SadDay while throwing up peace signs and doing a duck face is insane. If you are more worried about your lighting than the grieving widow, just leave the building immediately. 2. Nothing screams romance like a fresh grave. Some guys actually think a funeral is the perfect time to propose because the whole family is already there. You are literally kneeling on dirt that was just dug up for grandma to save money on a venue. This is not efficient. It is traumatizing for everyone involved. 3. Read the room, Karen. Trying to recruit the weeping widow into your essential oil pyramid scheme is a new low. She needs tissues, not a starter kit for your scam business. Using a wake to hit your monthly sales quota guarantees you a special spot in the afterlife, and it is not the good place. 4. Silence is holy until it isn't. Right in the middle of a tearful prayer, a phone blasts a heavy metal ringtone at max volume. But it gets worse. Instead of silencing it, the guy actually answers and loudly whispers, "I can't talk, I'm at a funeral." Just turn the thing off, you are not the president. 5. The body was not even cold yet. While guests were paying respects in the living room, a nephew was in the back putting sticky notes on the furniture he wanted. He literally unplugged the flat-screen TV and walked it out to his car during the wake. That is absolute vulture behavior. 6. Sports fans are dedicated, but this is ridiculous. A guy was caught propping his phone up against a flower arrangement to stream the playoffs during the service. He even fist-pumped when his team scored a touchdown while the priest was reading scripture. If you cannot miss 1/4 of football, seek help. 7. Public speaking is hard, but try not to ruin a marriage from the pulpit. One speaker decided to share a funny story about a weekend trip to Vegas that the wife definitely did not know about. The silence in that room was louder than any scream. Some secrets should definitely stay buried with the body. 8. We all love a free meal, but calm down. There is always one distant relative who treats the funeral reception like a grocery run. She brought 3 empty plastic containers and shoveled all the shrimp into her purse before the immediate family even ate. That is just starvation-level greed mixed with zero class. 9. Professional crashers are a real problem. Some people literally scan local obituaries just to find a free lunch. They show up, shake hands with people they do not know, fake a few tears, and fill a plate with food before vanishing into thin air. Treating a stranger's tragedy as a free buffet is the Grim Reaper version of a cheap date. 10. This is a memorial, not a business mixer. A local real estate agent actually went down the line of grieving guests, handing out business cards and asking if they planned to sell the deceased's house soon. He was pitching listings before the coffin was even in the ground. The hustle culture has officially gone too far. 11. Grief does weird things to people, but hitting on the widow at the reception is just predatory. There is always that one guy who slides up with a drink and whispers, "So you're single now," while her mascara is still running. Treating a funeral like a speed dating event for the emotionally vulnerable is absolutely demonic behavior. 12. We know the deceased owed people money, but maybe wait a week. One guest literally cornered the grieving daughter by the punch bowl to ask for the $20 her dad borrowed in 1999. Demanding petty cash while the family is picking out a headstone is the definition of tacky and heartless. 13. White is traditionally for weddings, not for burying your aunt. Yet someone always shows up in a full-blown white lace dress looking like a runaway bride. It screams a desperate need for attention. You are supposed to blend in with the mourners, not look like you are about to walk down the aisle with the ghost. 14. Everyone looks a little different when they are embalmed, but keep your reviews to yourself. I heard a lady loudly critiquing the makeup job on the corpse, saying he looked too orange and waxy right in front of his mother. It is a funeral home, not a Yelp review page for the afterlife. 15. We get it. You are addicted to nicotine, but ripping a massive vape cloud in the back of the church is disrespectful on a chemical level. Blowing cotton candy-flavored smoke over the grieving family's heads makes the entire sanctuary smell like a cheap carnival. Step outside or just breathe air for 1 hour. 16. The eulogy is supposed to honor the dead, not be your personal stand-up comedy special. One guy went up and talked for 30 minutes exclusively about his own life, his job promotion, and his new car, barely mentioning the deceased once. Hijacking a memorial service to boost your own ego is strictly forbidden. 17. Floral arrangements are expensive, but that does not make them free souvenirs. After the burial, a neighbor was caught loading the expensive wreaths and bouquets into her trunk to decorate her own front porch. Stealing flowers off a fresh grave to save money on landscaping is a level of cheap that is actually criminal. 18. Grief is exhausting, but snoring through the service is a bad look. There is always an uncle in the second row who falls asleep and starts sawing logs louder than the organ music. Everyone is trying to be solemn, and this guy sounds like a chainsaw in a library. Someone needs to elbow him hard. 19. Politics ruin everything, including funerals. One attendee showed up wearing a bright red political hat and a campaign t-shirt, looking to start an argument with the grieving liberals in the family. Using a death in the family as a billboard for your voting preferences is the quickest way to get uninvited from the wake. 20. Holding a grudge is one thing, but expressing it at the podium is wild. A brother stood up and said, "He was a jerk in life, and I bet he is arguing with the devil right now." The gasp in the room sucked all the oxygen out. There is a time for honesty, and then there is just being cruel. 21. Parenting seems to take a day off during funerals. You will see kids running up and down the aisles screaming or playing games on an iPad with the volume at max. The parents just sit there smiling like it is cute. It is not cute. It is a solemn ceremony, not a playground or a daycare center. 22. Flash photography has no place near a casket. I am talking about the person who leans right into the open coffin and snaps a close-up photo with the flash, blinding everyone nearby. They treat the body like a tourist attraction or a museum exhibit. It is invasive, creepy, and honestly just gross. 23. Hunger strikes at inconvenient times, but have some class. A group of friends actually ordered a pizza delivery to the funeral home parking lot because the service was running long. The driver showed up with 3 large pepperonis while the pallbearers were carrying the casket out. That is just aggressive disrespect. 24. Open bars at wakes are a dangerous game. There is always one person who takes advantage and gets sloppy drunk before the speeches even start. Watching someone stumble into a flower arrangement or slur their condolences to the priest is the kind of secondhand embarrassment that haunts you forever. 25. Stop asking for the Wi-Fi password the second you walk in the door. The family is greeting guests and crying, and you are interrupting them to ask if the funeral home has good internet so you can check Instagram. If you cannot survive offline for 45 minutes, just stay home and scroll on your couch. 26. Complaining about the cost of the funeral to the person paying for it is insane. A distant cousin told the widow she got ripped off on the casket and that he could have found a cheaper box at Costco. She just buried her husband. She does not need your financial auditing or coupon clipping advice right now. 27. The +1 invite is a privilege, not a right. Bringing a random date who has never met the deceased and is wearing flip-flops is a bold move. They usually stand around looking bored, checking their watch and asking when the food is coming out. Leave the random Tinder hookup at home for the day. 28. Some people treat funerals like high school reunions. They stand in the back laughing loudly, high-fiving, and catching up on gossip while the family is sobbing in the front row. It creates this weird, disjointed atmosphere where half the room is mourning and the other half is throwing a party. 29. Getting the name wrong is the ultimate fail. It happens more than you think. A priest or a speaker repeatedly calling the deceased Robert when his name was definitely Richard. Nobody wants to correct them in the middle of the service, so everyone just sits there in awkward, agonizing silence while the wrong ghost gets honored. 30. Parking etiquette exists for a reason. Blocking the hearse because you did not want to walk an extra 50 feet is a logistical nightmare. The funeral director literally had to interrupt the service to ask the owner of a Honda Civic to move so they could actually transport the body to the cemetery. 31. Indoor sunglasses are a bold choice, but at a funeral, you look like a failed secret agent. Unless you are literally blind or extremely famous, take the aviators off. Hiding your eyes while shaking the widow's hand makes you look shady, detached, and honestly just too cool for school. 32. Grief has not even fully set in, and the vultures are already circling for the loot. I saw a niece ask the lawyer loud enough for everyone to hear, "When do we read the will?" before the body was even in the ground. You are supposed to be mourning a life, not calculating your new net worth. 33. It is not a competition, but some people treat grief like an Olympic sport. One lady threw herself onto the casket screaming, "Take me instead," even though she had not seen the guy in 20 years. It creates a scene where actual family members have to comfort the drama queen. 34. A eulogy is a tribute, not a stand-up set or a rock concert performance. Yet, sometimes people start awkwardly clapping after a speech like they are at a poetry slam. It confuses everyone and breaks the solemn mood instantly. Just nod your head respectfully and save the applause for the theater. 35. There is a time for health lectures, and a funeral is absolutely not it. A relative stood up and said, "If he had just listened to me about that vegan diet, he would still be here." Blaming the dead guy for dying is the ultimate power move of a narcissist. 36. Funeral homes often host multiple services, so please check the sign on the door. A guy walked into the wrong room, ate a plate of cookies, and shook hands with people for 20 minutes before realizing he did not know anyone. He just casually walked out without apologizing to the confused family. 37. Funeral directors are there to manage a crisis, not to be your next date. I saw a woman actually slipping her number to the guy driving the hearse because she liked his black suit. Flirting over a casket is a level of thirst that science cannot explain. Keep it professional, please. 38. Networking has a time and place, and the gravesite is definitely not LinkedIn. A coworker approached the boss at the funeral of their colleague and asked, "So who is going to get his corner office now?" The body is still there, and you are already measuring the drapes. Pure savage. 39. Chewing gum is fine, but popping bubbles during a moment of silence is a felony. The sound of someone aggressively smacking their lips echoes off the church walls like gunfire. If you cannot mourn without blowing pink bubbles, maybe just stay in the car until the grown-ups are finished. 40. Some guests treat the memorial service like it is a wedding with free party favors. An aunt was caught dumping the water out of a vase so she could shove the centerpiece into her tote bag. Stealing decorations paid for by a grieving family is just cheap, tacky, and weird. 41. The ham sandwiches are not Michelin star quality, so keep your food critique to yourself. A guest loudly complained that the potato salad was too bland and the coffee was burnt within earshot of the widow. She is mourning her husband, not running a catering company for your specific taste buds. 42. Logistics are tough, but do not ask the family for a lift in the limo. A distant cousin actually tried to hop into the family car because he did not want to pay for an Uber to the cemetery. You are making the bereaved play taxi driver on the worst day of their life. 43. The parking lot is for parking, not for used car transactions. I heard about a guy who put a "for sale" sign in the window of his truck because he knew a lot of people would be walking by. Trying to flip your vehicle at a funeral is a masterclass in tackiness. 44. Unless it is a legitimate service animal, leave your nervous chihuahua at home. Someone brought their emotional support dog that proceeded to bark at the priest every time he spoke. It turned a solemn goodbye into a chaotic zoo visit, and nobody had the heart to kick the puppy out. 45. Cemeteries are spooky and interesting, but they are not playgrounds for bored children. I have seen kids playing hide-and-seek behind tombstones while their parents ignored them to chat. Using other people's final resting places as a jungle gym is disrespectful to every single family buried in that graveyard. 46. Settling scores with the dead is a one-sided battle that makes you look petty. A guy stood up to share a memory and ended up ranting about a lawnmower the deceased never returned in 2005. Holding a grudge over yard equipment for 15 years is a level of bitter we should avoid. 47. We mentioned snoring, but straight up passing out in the front row is worse. One uncle fell asleep with his mouth wide open, right in the line of sight of the eulogist. It is hard to give a heartfelt speech when the guy in front of you looks like a corpse himself. 48. Real estate creates greed, even before the funeral ends. Neighbors were overheard discussing how much the widow could get for the house now that she is all alone. Speculating on the market value of a grieving woman's home while eating her deviled eggs is the definition of neighborhood villainy. 49. We covered individual selfies, but the group funeral selfie is a whole new beast. A bunch of friends gathered around the grave, smiling and squeezing in for a wide-angle shot. They even asked a stranger to take the photo. It looked like a vacation picture, just with more dirt and sadness. 50. Graveside services can be hot, but you are not the one in a wool suit or a box. A guest would not stop whining about the sun and fanning herself dramatically during the final prayer. Complaining about the weather while someone is being lowered into the ground shows zero perspective. 51. Updating your relationship status on Facebook from married to single while sitting in the front row of your spouse's funeral is diabolical. Everyone gets the notification on their phones at the same time. You haven't even ordered the headstone yet, and you are already advertising your availability to the internet. That level of thirst is just disrespectful and honestly terrifying. 52. We have seen people fighting over wills, but physically removing jewelry from the deceased in the open casket is grave robbing in plain sight. An aunt was caught trying to slide a diamond ring off her sister's cold finger because she promised it to me. Doing that in front of a room full of weeping relatives is a surefire way to get arrested or haunted. 53. Life goes on, but hosting a gender reveal party at a funeral is purely psychotic. A pregnant cousin actually popped a black balloon to reveal pink confetti right next to the open grave. She screamed, "It's a girl," while the widow was sobbing. Mixing new life with death in such a loud, glittery way is the ultimate definition of narcissism. 54. Memorial t-shirts are a nice gesture, but setting up a merchandise booth in the church lobby is insane. One family member printed shirts with the deceased's face and tried to sell them for $20 a pop to cover funeral costs. Turning a tragedy into a retail pop-up shop is tacky, weird, and makes everyone feel obligated to buy your grief merch. 55. Liquid courage is a lie when it comes to eulogies. A best friend downed 3 shots of whiskey before walking up to the podium and proceeded to slur through a story about a bachelor party that involved goats and the police. The widow was horrified, the priest was confused, and the guy eventually tripped over the microphone cord. It was a total disaster. 56. Dramatic grief is one thing, but pointing at a living relative and screaming, "It should have been you," is straight out of a soap opera. A mother-in-law actually yelled this at the surviving husband right by the grave. It turned the entire funeral into a wrestling match. That kind of emotional violence leaves scars that no amount of therapy can ever fix. 57. When the invite says adults only for the reception, bringing your 3 toddlers is a bold move. They were running under the tables and screaming during the toast, completely ruining the somber vibe. The parents just laughed and said, "Kids will be kids." No, this is a funeral, not a Chuck E. Cheese birthday party. Get a babysitter or stay home. 58. Driving in a funeral procession requires patience, but one impatient cousin started honking his horn because the hearse was moving too slow. He was literally tailgating the body of his own uncle. Road rage is bad enough on the highway, but directing it at a dead person is a level of disrespect that deserves to have your license revoked permanently. 59. Grief makes people vulnerable. So pitching your life coaching business at a funeral is predatory. A guy was handing out brochures titled "Moving On" to crying guests, offering a discount if they signed up that day. He was trying to monetize their sadness before the tears were even dry. That is not entrepreneurship, that is just being a terrible human being. 60. We mentioned getting the name wrong, but the priest reading the wrong obituary entirely is a nightmare. He spent 10 minutes talking about a loving grandmother who baked cookies, while the family stared at the casket of a 20-year-old man. Nobody had the heart to stop him, so they just let him finish the wrong life story. It was agonizingly awkward. 61. The family asked for donations to a cancer charity instead of flowers, but someone had other plans. A guest was actually caught swiping cash from the donation basket when they thought nobody was looking. Stealing charity money meant for medical research right in front of a corpse is a one-way ticket to the absolute worst place imaginable. 62. You would think gambling is off-limits here, but a group of estranged cousins was actually taking bets on how long the widow would cry. They were exchanging cash in the back row based on the length of the sermon. Turning a family tragedy into a Vegas sportsbook is degenerate behavior that belongs in a dive bar, not a house of worship. 63. Job hunting is tough, but handing your resume to the CEO at his own father's funeral is a career suicide move. A junior employee actually cornered his boss by the buffet to ask about a promotion now that things might be changing. Read the room, buddy. You are not showing initiative. You are showing everyone that you are a sociopath. 64. Old people making the "I guess I'm next" joke is a classic, but doing it while pointing at the open grave is terrifying for the grandkids. It stops being funny when you start measuring yourself against the coffin size. It makes the whole event morbid in the wrong way and leaves everyone wondering if they need to start planning another funeral immediately. 65. Technology ruins everything. The deceased's phone was left on a table, and during the silence, a text message popped up on the screen saying, "I miss you, baby," from a number that definitely wasn't the wife. The gasp in the room sucked all the air out. That is literally a ghost busting himself from beyond the grave. 66. Sports rivalries run deep, but changing the deceased's outfit is a step too far. A prankster brother put a rival team's hat on the body in the open casket as a final joke. The widow was absolutely furious when she saw her die-hard Yankees fan husband wearing a Red Sox cap for eternity. That is not a prank, that is desecration. 67. We have seen people fight over TVs, but fighting over the vacation condo in the church parking lot is next level. Two sisters were screaming about who gets the Florida timeshare while the hearse was still idling nearby. They were literally pulling hair over property rights before their mother was even buried. Greed makes people do the ugliest things imaginable. 68. Wearing a bright red cocktail dress to a somber funeral is a desperate cry for attention. One ex-girlfriend showed up looking like she was going to a gala, clearly trying to upstage the widow. It was a visual slap in the face to everyone mourning. You are supposed to pay respects, not audition for a reality TV show about home wreckers. 69. We talked about taking food, but bringing a cooler is a professional operation. A distant uncle brought a literal cooler on wheels to the reception and filled it with beer and sandwiches for the road. He treated the wake like a tailgate party. He was stocking his fridge for the week on the dime of a grieving family. That is peak trashy behavior. 70. Checking into the funeral home on Foursquare or Facebook to get points is dystopian. A teenager was complaining loudly that the funeral home location wasn't loading on his map, so he couldn't prove he was there. He was more concerned about his digital footprint than the dead relative. If you need GPS verification to prove you care, just go home. 71. We live in a digital age, but Siri has no business interrupting a eulogy. During a moment of absolute silence, a phone in the front row suddenly activated and shouted, "I found 3 directions to the nearest liquor store." The timing was so comically bad that the priest actually stopped praying to glare at the offender. If you cannot figure out how to silence your robot assistant, leave the technology in the car. 72. Art helps us heal, but uninvited interpretive dance is just traumatic. A niece decided the best way to honor her grandfather was to perform a contemporary dance routine to a pop song right in front of the altar. She was rolling around on the floor in a leotard while the family tried to look anywhere else. It was awkward, physically painful to watch, and completely hijacked the somber mood. 73. The mistress showdown is a classic trope, but seeing it in real life is a train wreck. The secret girlfriend showed up wearing a full black veil, looking more widowed than the actual wife. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife as they glared at each other across the aisle. It turned a respectful goodbye into a pay-per-view wrestling match waiting to happen. 74. Debt forgiveness is great, but celebrating it over a corpse is trashy. A guy stood up during the open mic session and loudly thanked God that he didn't have to pay back the $5,000 he borrowed now. He was literally cheering about his financial gain while the family was sobbing 5 feet away. That is a level of greed that guarantees you bad karma for life. 75. Technology makes sharing easy, but airdropping memes during a funeral is psychotic. Someone thought it would be funny to beam a random cat picture to every open iPhone in the church. The collective ding sound rippled through the pews during the final prayer. It completely broke the solemnity and turned a spiritual moment into a high school cafeteria prank. 76. We all know that one guy who thinks he is the main character of every story. He turned his eulogy into a 30-minute monologue about his own spiritual journey, his divorce, and his gym routine, barely mentioning the deceased's name once. He treated the funeral like his personal podcast recording session. It is narcissism in its purest, most ugly form. 77. Multi-level marketing schemes are relentless, but placing business cards inside the casket is a new low. A distant cousin was caught slipping her real estate card into the pocket of the deceased's suit jacket, just in case anyone looks. She was literally trying to network with the dead, or the undertaker. That is a hustle culture mindset that needs to be studied by psychiatrists. 78. Generosity is nice, but regifting at a wake is tacky beyond belief. A neighbor handed the grieving family a condolence card that clearly had a crossed-out name from a previous birthday inside. She literally recycled an old Hallmark card to save $5. That kind of cheap laziness is an insult to the living and the dead. 79. Comedy roasts are for retirement parties, not for burying your dad. A son thought it would be hilarious to list all of his father's failures and bad haircuts in a loving way during the speech. The jokes fell completely flat, and the silence was deafening. There is a time for humor, but mocking the dead guy to his crying mother is definitely not it. 80. Spelling matters, especially when you are carving it into stone or printing it on a sash. The floral arrangement ribbon read, "Rest in peach" instead of "peace," and nobody caught it until it was right next to the coffin. It looked like a tribute to a fruit rather than a final goodbye. It's a tragic typo that turned a serious moment into a suppressed giggle fest. 81. Music sets the mood, but hijacking the aux cord at a wake is a crime against humanity. A teenage nephew decided the reception needed more energy and started blasting EDM music from his portable Bluetooth speaker. He turned a somber family gathering into a confusing rave while Grandma was just trying to eat her potato salad in peace. 82. Some secrets should die with you, but clumsy speakers often dig them up. A friend accidentally revealed in his speech that the deceased had a wild weekend in Tijuana that the wife definitely did not know about. The look on her face shifted from sadness to pure rage in 3 seconds flat. He managed to ruin a marriage even after death. 83. TikTok challenges have officially gone too far. A group of teenagers was seen doing a viral dance trend in the background of the cemetery, using the tombstones as props. They were literally doing the gritty on someone's final resting place for clout. It is a level of disrespect that makes you lose all faith in the next generation. 84. Being frugal is smart, but asking for the deceased's clothes is ghoulish. A nephew asked the widow if he could have the Italian suit the body was wearing because it's a shame to bury good wool. He wanted them to undress the corpse so he could look sharp at his next job interview. That is a request that should get you banned from the family forever. 85. Dietary restrictions are important, but making a scene about the communion wafers is insane. A guest loudly complained to the priest that the body of Christ wasn't gluten-free and asked for an alternative option. You are at a funeral mass, not a trendy brunch spot in Los Angeles. Swallow the wafer or just sit down and be quiet. 86. Empathy is hard, but comparing a spouse's death to a pet is a failure. A woman told the grieving widow, "I know exactly how you feel. I lost my hamster last week." She equated a 30-year marriage to a rodent that runs on a wheel. It is the kind of tone-deaf comment that makes you want to scream. 87. We know sports are life, but shouting yes when checking the score on your phone is unforgivable. A guy in the back row forgot where he was and celebrated a touchdown right as the casket was being lowered. He tried to play it off as a cough, but everyone saw the fist pump. Go watch the game at a bar, you absolute clown. 88. Unless you are hired to play, leave the acoustic guitar at home. There is always that one guy who thinks playing an off-key version of Wonderwall is the perfect way to heal everyone's grief. He forces everyone to listen to his 3-chord recital instead of sharing memories. It is not a campfire, it is a funeral service. 89. Retail returns have a policy, but trying to return a gift to the deceased is savage. A nephew brought a sweater to the funeral home that his uncle had given him for Christmas, asking the widow if he could get the receipt to exchange it for cash. He was trying to get a refund from a dead man. That is a level of greed that is hard to comprehend. 90. Giving the deceased a performance review is weirdly corporate. A former boss stood up and talked about the deceased's productivity levels and attendance record as if he was conducting an annual evaluation. He reduced a human life to a spreadsheet of data. It was cold, impersonal, and proved he never actually knew the person at all. 91. Identity theft is a crime, but stealing rewards points is just petty. A daughter was overheard on the phone with an airline customer service agent trying to transfer her dad's frequent flyer miles to her own account during the viewing. She was worried about losing her status upgrade while her father was lying in a box 3 feet away. 92. We thought cell phones were bad, but talking into your wrist like a spy is somehow worse. A guy was dictating a text message to his Apple Watch during the moment of silence. Everyone could hear him loudly saying, comma, period, send, no delete, while the priest was trying to pray. It is futuristic tackiness that ruins the entire atmosphere. 93. Everyone reads the obituary, but fact-checking it out loud in the lobby is wild. A cousin stood by the guest book with a red pen, circling typos in the program and complaining that they got the high school graduation year wrong. He was editing the death notice like a grumpy English teacher instead of offering his condolences to the family. 94. We know funerals are expensive, but asking for a refund is insane. A guest actually complained to the funeral director that the service was too short and demanded some of his donation back. He treated a religious ceremony like a bad movie theater experience. You are not a customer. You are a mourner. Act like it. 95. Trying to fix the corpse is a bold move that always ends badly. An aunt reached into the casket to adjust the deceased's tie because it was crooked and ended up messing up the makeup. She was literally touching up a dead body like a stylist on a photo shoot. Leave the mortuary science to the professionals, please. 96. Grief searches for answers, but blaming the Illuminati is not helpful. An uncle cornered the weeping widow to explain his conspiracy theory that the hospital was part of a global government plot. He was drawing imaginary diagrams in the air and talking about secret societies while she was just trying to mourn her husband. Read the room, you maniac. 97. Trying to play matchmaker at a funeral is twisted, but it happens. An aunt kept trying to introduce the grieving widower to her divorced friend from bingo class, loudly whispering, "She's single too." She was literally trying to arrange a date while the body was still in the room. It is a level of desperation that makes everyone else want to disappear. 98. Keepsakes are meaningful, but taking physical souvenirs without asking is straight-up witchcraft. An aunt was caught with a pair of scissors trying to snip a lock of hair from the corpse for a locket. Treating the body like a craft project is a violation of every boundary imaginable and is guaranteed to traumatize everyone watching. 99. We know you are hungry, but eating during the service is a crime. A guy pulled a bag of chips out of his pocket and started crunching loudly during the eulogy. The sound echoed through the silent church like gunfire. If you cannot wait an hour to eat a snack, stay in the car. 100. Trying to convert the mourners is a classic move that never works. A guest handed out religious pamphlets to everyone in the pews, telling them they were going to hell if they didn't repent right now. She turned a funeral into a fire and brimstone sermon. It is aggressive, unwanted, and makes everyone uncomfortable. 101. Finally, the ultimate disgrace is live streaming the open casket on TikTok. A teenager walked up to the body, phone in hand, and started narrating like an influencer. He asked his followers to drop a like for respect while zooming in on the deceased's face. It is a dystopian nightmare that proves we have lost all sense of decency. We saw the vultures circling today. Now look at your own family and be honest. What is the one specific item in your house that your relatives will 100% get into a fistfight over the second you are gone? Is it the jewelry, the house, or the classic car? Tell me what starts the war in the comments. Like, if you know I'm right, subscribe if you plan to spend it all before you go.